Schools are handing kids internet-connected devices faster than they hand out pencils. We've quietly accepted a model where EdTech is just big tech in a sweater vest, and we've confused more screens with better learning. Meanwhile, the people who profit from our children's attention are the ones writing the playbook. Now, if you're a ruckus maker, you already know that's upside down. Your job isn't to keep up with every shiny new platform, it's to protect childhood, preserve relationships, and reimagine school for a future that actually exists. When laptops replace conversation, grade portals replace phone calls, and AI grades essays that were written by AI in the first place, we're not just tinkering with tools, we're hollowing out the very skills that kids need to thrive. And if school leaders don't draw the line, Silicon Valley will happily draw it for them. That's why today's conversation matters. Today, my guest is Emily Cherkin, the screen time consultant, a former middle school teacher turned national advocate for tech-intentional schools and families, and a leading voice pushing back on EdTech's impact on childhood. You can learn more about her work at thescreentimeconsultant.com. I'm Danny Bauer, and this is Better Leaders, Better Schools, the original podcast for innovative school leaders who want to do school different, even within a traditional setting, so that we create a campus experience worth showing up for. Thanks for ruckus makers just like you. This ruckus cast ranks in the top 1% of all the shows in the world. So once again, thanks for pressing play. Thanks for listening. And we'll be right back after a quick message from our show sponsors. Still scrambling for supplies like it's 1999? ODP Business Solutions streamlines everything from pencils to projectors so you can focus on what matters, making an impact. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to learn more. That's odpbusiness.com/education. As districts look ahead to the coming school year, the groundwork starts earlier than you might think. The way professional learning is designed can shape culture, collaboration, and stability long before students arrive. Frontline Education's 2026 K-12 Lens Report takes a closer look at how districts are connecting professional growth to stronger staffing stability. Download the full report at frontlineeducation.com/leaders to learn more. That's frontlineeducation.com/leaders. IXL is a go-to support for classroom teachers because its adaptive platform makes differentiated instruction easy. See for yourself and get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. All right. And Emily, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the school tries to give you a laptop and you said no. Tell us that story.
So my daughter is an 8th grader. In the 6th grade, she was given a laptop for school. I watched her use it primarily as a tool of distraction rather than one that I saw as beneficial to her learning experience. I'm a former 7th and 8th grade teacher myself, so I really knew what to be looking for at this age, and then decided in 7th grade last year to just politely decline the laptop. I wrote lots of letters. I connected with a principal. I made sure I contacted teachers before the school year started because, of course, this asking for something different for my child would unfairly burden teachers. I'm very aware of that. That was my biggest concern. And for the most part, I've had very supportive responses. I would also say my daughter is thriving without it. And it's not that she doesn't access the platforms at home on occasion when she needs to look something up, which we can talk about whether or not I think that's a good idea, but at least she's not completely cut off. She's not, there's a loaner laptop that sometimes she'll borrow when they do word processing stuff. But so it's not perfect, but I see it as a opportunity to sort of put a stick in the spoke of this very fast spinning cycle that I don't think is actually what's best for kids.
Yeah. And that's why, welcomed you onto the show because, like whatever our ruckus maker point of view, we talk about doing school different, right? And there's a lot
Yeah.
of things that I find exciting about tech and AI, but that doesn't mean they don't have flaws or things that we should seriously consider. I really appreciate, thoughtful dialogue from different point of views, right? So I'm
Yeah.
super excited to be having this conversation, and I love that you're living it out. We'll put in the show notes. I'm sure maybe we'll talk about it. But you mentioned how you just spoke to the UK Parliament, and so obviously there's a lot of impact that your work is having.
Thank you.
Almost like, I don't know. I see my nephews using tech, right? And so what's interesting is just how it's like always around. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like that
Yeah.
crutch to fall back to. And like the boys at times, disengage and not having conversation, this kind of stuff. And sometimes I hear, I'm gonna say it, I know you're not saying this, but sometimes I hear from people like, oh, kids are weird these days, right? And
Yeah.
like they don't know how to talk to each other and this kind of stuff. And so I think this is all, linked up. One thing I do want to say is short anecdote. Been really working on storytelling, right? I'm not
Mm.
doing that right now, but I have been doing that. And I remember telling the boys a story, and it was just about 6.5, 7 minutes. And I
Mm.
was surprised that they actually didn't reach for the phone. So it gave me
Yeah.
hope, at
Yeah.
least, right?
Yeah.
That the
Yes.
humans are still there. But
Yes. Yes.
like, I think my question is this, Emily. Did you have any concerns? Did your daughter have any concerns? Or I'm curious, like, what's been her experience? Like, if
Mhm.
she's the one or maybe one of a few, right, that
Mhm.
don't have the tech and all the friends probably do and use it all the time. Like, can
Yeah.
you unpack that a bit for us
Yeah.
too?
Well, and actually, I think I wanna say something too about there's sort of really 2 elephants in the room is how I explain it. Like, there's the
Yeah.
student
Okay.
personal phones, like kids bringing devices that their parents
Yeah.
bought for them,
Yeah.
or devices that the school has given them. Because my daughter has me as her mother, she is always gonna be the kid that's doing it differently, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. She's sometimes okay with that. She's, 14 and a half and does not have her own smartphone, so
Right.
we've held out on that one as well. So she's used to having it be a different way anyway. All of her friends at this point do. But, the first day of 7th grade when she didn't have the laptop, and I definitely tell parents who seek out, like, do I want to refuse the laptop? How do I do that? Is to really also talk to your kid about this, because that's often one of the biggest responses I get is, well, I don't want my kid to be the only one. To which I say, like, being different isn't bad. There are
Right. Yeah.
benefits to being unique. There are benefits to taking a stand. And, it would be problematic if you had retaliation against a student for this. It does happen. I'm
Hmm.
not going to say
Hmm.
that it doesn't. But certainly to me, that would be another opportunity to escalate this. So what with my daughter, the first day of school, it literally was one day. People were like, well, why don't you have a laptop? She said, and we planned this. We said, you just tell people my parents find that I learn better without a laptop, and make it about us, make it about you and your
Hmm.
learning. Don't make this about the school gives us these laptops and they're bad. Let's avoid the
Sure.
judgment. And so kids were curious and then they didn't ask, and now it's normal. Like, it was literally one day that she had to do it. Now she does have to advocate for herself. So, like, if there's a lesson that they are required to type something, she has to go and ask for the loaner. Like, but to me, that's skill building. I don't have any problem
Hmm.
with that. I want her to advocate for herself. I don't want it to be the default. I don't want it to be comfortable and easy. Schools should be pushing us a little bit out of our comfort zones. It should involve friction. It should be challenging. I think the laptops provide way too much ease and frictionless experience at the expense of skill building.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And I know you love to talk about how you're not anti-tech, but tech intentional. And I think you're riffing a bit on that. But can you tell us a little bit more about what it means to be tech intentional?
Yeah, to me, it's a phrase I coined. To being tech intentional means using technology in alignment with healthy development and our values, and not at the expense of cognition or emotional well-being or distraction or focus or privacy or safety. And so to me, there is a difference between technology education and educational technology. So I always say ed tech is not
Hmm.
tech ed. And to
Hmm.
me, I would love for there to be computer labs again. Most schools don't have those anymore because children are given one-to-one devices
One
in school.
devices, yeah.
Yeah, right. As young as kindergarten. I mean, we're talking 5-year-olds with iPads in school
Sure.
for school. And so what's happened as a result of that, there are no more computer labs. There is rarely a technology teacher, one who is specifically trained in technology education. So all of that skill stuff gets rolled over into, because it's now embedded in the curriculum, right? So we're not teaching children about technology or how to type or how to discern mis and disinformation. We're telling them you have an iPad and you're going to learn to read and you're going to do math on it, which none of that makes sense pedagogically or developmentally, but it's also very confusing because we're telling kids now, oh, phones are bad and, your mental health is going to suffer and we shouldn't have them in school, but here's an iPad for learning. Like, what a contradictory message to give children. And so I would really like parents and educators to think differently about that role of technology in schools. How can we make it tech ed instead of ed tech?
Yeah, right on. And when I was still in the classroom, this was even on a campus, right? This is a decade ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild that this show took off and changed my life, and now I get to do this full time. But I was the weird teacher teaching kids to really like think critically about the
Yes.
messages and the
Yes.
apps and those kind of things and the bias, that's in there and
Yes.
who profits from them
Yeah.
using it and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because I feel I don't know, trap's the right word, but there's a game to be played where I think one way the show's grown is by word of mouth, right? So
Yeah.
you put something good out there, people will tell their friends. But certainly, I try to leverage social media when I can, to be exposed to more folks. But I find myself 10 years in, just like I actually hate social media. It's just
Me
that's the
too.
only way I can describe it. I find it totally useless, no value add to me except the opportunity to shout into the internet void that, hey, there's some cool stuff we're doing, or to share a story where I hope it might make somebody's day better or whatever. But
Mhm.
like if I catch myself scrolling, I just do like sort of a moral inventory, and I'm like, how am I feeling right now? And it's usually not good,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so then I close that app. I only have one app on my phone for social because of that. It's just like,
Yeah.
ugh, it's icky. It's like
And that
sludge.
to me is being tech intentional, right? Like you're thinking
Sure.
about the impact it's having, how it makes you feel. And I would also argue you and I as adults, and I'm guilty of scrolling and feeling bad too. We have fully formed prefrontal cortex, in our
Right.
brains. Children don't. So,
Hmm.
that it's a myth to think that we can just teach children how to use these things safely. That just replace phone with vaping. We can just
Right.
teach children how to vape safely. We can just teach them to moderate their vaping.
Yeah.
It's
That's
it's
a
it's
good way of putting it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So why do we do it and give tech such a free pass? So
exactly.
what did you notice, as like teachers were using tech in the classroom and how it impacted, some relationships with students and parents and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I can speak personally. Over a decade ago was when I was in the
Hmm.
classroom and I noticed a huge shift as soon as tech was introduced for interestingly, at first it was for me as a teacher, right? I was supposed to start uploading assignments to
Grades and stuff. Yeah.
portal and grades. Immediately, I noticed a few things. One, my students stopped coming to talk to me and they were told to go check the portal. And I was like, well, that seems to bypass some pretty important skill development for middle school students. So that
Hmm.
happened. The second thing that happened was that parents had access and were suddenly emailing me constantly about why did my kid not get a grade on this? When are you going to assess this? How does she do a retake? And none of that was stuff that I wanted to hear from parents. I wanted to work with my students on that. And so to me, that disruption in school, and that was in 2012. I mean, this is, over a
Yeah.
decade ago. And so I think it has gotten so much worse, so much more embedded, and even normalized. I worry a lot about higher education teacher training programs that are giving the impression that education is that now. And I would argue, no, it's not. That's what the tech industry wants us to think. That's convenient for those selling these products in schools in the first place. But that's not actually
Mhm.
what's better for children or teaching.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a principal who basically had to force the faculty to call parents regarding grades.
Well,
This is, whatever. They were available on the portal and that kind of thing. But I think she was afraid that the relationships between,
Sure.
school and parents were suffering. The other thing too is that, maybe some parents, you're making some assumptions that they have access, that they know how to log
Sure.
in,
Exactly.
that they're going to be checking. And there is a type of parent that does that. And there's
Yeah.
also parents that don't. And one's
Right.
not
The
better
ones
than
who
the other.
want to check it are not the ones who do, and the ones who do are the ones who don't need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
we all know, yes, it's that's nothing like that. That hasn't changed. And
Right.
again, like I don't I think the problem was the pendulum has just swung so far towards all tech without sort of thinking thoughtfully about what tech might be useful and what tech is actually harmful or distracting or disruptive, especially to that
Hmm.
teacher-child relationship. Because and look, it's not fair to say this is all technology's fault. I think there are cultural problems around, it used to be helicopter parenting, and now I
Sure.
love this idea of lawnmower parenting, right? Where we go ahead of our children and mow away obstacles to
Hmm.
prevent them from feeling discomfort. And so that you see the response to that being, therefore, my kid needs a phone so I can reach them or that they can reach me in a case of an emergency, right? And then we assume the worst, and in doing so, giving them these devices, we actually prevent the skill development that will make them resilient in real world situations. Like it's this sort of counter. So it's not just this technology itself. I don't want to say it's 100% that. I think that's a
Yeah.
huge part of it, but it's not only that.
Right. And what I wanted to add to this was, so I was having a coach call with the principal recently, and one of the conundrums we were noodling on was an idea that the teachers really don't want to call parents, period.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the portal exists, number one, and number two, it sort of feels safer.
Yep.
It's certainly, you don't have to navigate conflict in the same way over email,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And depending, how many glasses of wine you're in or whatever, you could fire that off and hit send and feel like a total hero.
Or you're having ChatGPT write it for you. Because I've had teachers tell me, well, if I'm worried about what a parent's going to think and I want to tone it down or I want to, make it
Mhm.
sound less confrontational. And,
Sure.
I don't like that. I have to say, like,
Mm.
that takes away the human work of this. Like, to avoid, and that's not just true of teachers contacting parents. I mean, most of us prefer to text versus phone call anyway now. And I'm 47, I'm not even of the generation that grew up without
Mhm.
phone calls. So it's
Right.
totally different. I get that. And that to me is, again, that's that friction that we're avoiding to our own detriment. Because if we aren't willing as adults to have these difficult, uncomfortable conversations, why would we expect kids to? And so,
100%.
and that's so important. It doesn't matter whether technology is going to be in our future or not. It obviously will be. We still have to be
Mhm.
able to communicate with one another. And
Right.
I just think that that's actually one of the saddest parts of this. And I feel, again, a lot of empathy for teachers. I think parents have a lot of work to do on our own anxiety levels, the way we treat teachers. I mean, I think there is a huge problem there. I'm not excusing that. But I also think we all need to practice these skills.
That's the biggest thing, is the skill piece and being able to see the big picture and, sit in discomfort. Because
Exactly.
to believe that life is gonna be easy and without conflict is, like, probably the stupidest, mental model that one could use,
Totally.
right?
And the
Because, like,
least
you're just
reflective. Yeah,
yeah.
like, you do no one any favors when you think that if I can just bubble wrap you and prevent anything bad from ever happening in your entire childhood, that you'll be a resilient adult. It's literally the opposite.
Right. So I don't know if this leader will watch this episode or not, but sort of like where we landed was, maybe you need to make the phone call intentional. Maybe something else was providing like scripts, potentially, like how to
Yeah.
handle difficult conversations. And then thirdly, practicing and role playing, and
Yes,
modeling, right? Like how to
that's a
do
great
that
idea.
too. Because I think, not to they certainly, the teachers should have some ownership in this, right? Because it is ultimately up to them, and they need to reach out to the parents, but also just understand the context that they might not have the skill or have practice, like, navigating these conflicts.
Such a good point.
So
Yeah.
did I miss anything that you would add in terms of
No,
that?
and I can just say personally, when I entered the classroom for the first time, I mean, I knew how to write a lesson plan and do curriculum and
Yeah.
even be relational with my students. I had no experience talking to other parents. I wish, and I
Mm,
was young, I was like 22. I
sure.
wish part of my education had included that, had been training how to talk to parents, how to navigate conflict,
Yeah.
how to like assert myself. That was the scariest part of being a new teacher for me. And so I
Mhm.
don't blame teachers for wanting to avoid that, especially if you've never been taught or trained. So it's a
Yeah.
skill, and
Yeah.
we've got lots of convenient ways to avoid that. So I think that's a very good point.
Yeah. It's like it's hard to have that conversation, but I think the fear is mostly like how's the other person going to respond,
Yeah.
and like how to handle that. But yeah, good points there. When it comes back to intentional tech, and we're talking about that earlier, I think you have like three benchmarks around it. So what are those benchmarks?
Yeah, so the foundations of being tech intentional, my TLDR, as it were, I always
Hmm.
say it's later is better, less is more, relationships and skills before screens. And
Hmm.
that's how I view whatever use of technology we're bringing into this. So, we could less is more is sort of obvious, less time spent on a screen is better for us. It's
Right.
just a
Sure.
fact. And then later is better, is for children in particular. The later we introduce these tools, and really they're products more than they are tools at this point, the later we introduce them, whether that's at home or in school, the better, the more
Mm.
opportunity for their brains to develop optimally, right? And then relationships and skills have to come before screens. Those are not things we get later. Those aren't things that we just skip in childhood and then think we'll master in adulthood. It's not how it works. We will master the tech in adulthood. Tech is easy to master. It is
Mm.
easy to figure out, and more so than ever before. But if we, want to work in tech and we want to get hired as an engineer, our engineering skills are important. Yes, we should have those. Those come in higher ed. Those don't come in kindergarten. And you still have
Mhm.
to problem solve. You still have to work with, other colleagues. You still have to know how to communicate with your boss. All of those skills are going to be what sets someone up for success, not the technical ones.
What would you say to a principal? Because that's the majority of the audience, right? So a
Mhm.
ruckus maker, leading the campus, they're aligned with the point of view, wanting to do school different, right? To think of like how do we reimagine what's possible in the traditional box, so that we create these campus experiences we're showing up for. But they want to be intentional about tech, and obviously we've spoken a lot about it. But yeah, what are some things you would say, just like specifically to that campus leader? In
Yeah.
terms of, how they're thinking about it.
Well, I do love this idea of being a ruckus maker because to me, the future of education is tech intentional. And so
Mhm.
we need courageous school leaders to say, I'm going to buck the trend. I'm not going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm going to push back on the fact that generative AI tools don't belong in the classroom. I'm going to say that actually I'm going to draw a line in the sand for that. Or I'm going to look at the fact that we've given internet connected devices to kindergartners and wonder whether that's actually pedagogically, ethically, morally, safely aligned with what we know children need. So,
Mhm.
certainly having courage is the first step to say, wait a minute, actually the emperor has no clothes. That's what I really want from a leader. And then
Mm.
I actually would love to find a school that's willing to really reevaluate how they use technology, because I have a tech intentional school certification that I can offer. And, like you get to put that on your website and say, I'm a tech intentional certified school. And, more practically, it's going to be difficult. Like I am under no illusion that this is, something easy to solve. I just wrote a piece about the enmeshment problem within educational technology products because,
Mm.
everything is so embedded now that to extricate one or some is to kind of collapse all. And
Mhm.
that's going to be a lot of work and very messy. But I think the risk of doing nothing or continuing with that is far worse than the disruption that it will cause, right? And so to me, it's being willing to go through the mess. I mean, one of my favorite adages is, the only way out is through. And so to go through it because it's the right thing to do, even if it's the hard thing.
Yeah, the courage piece. Societies is really interesting because I remember, my mom tells me a story. She's sitting in a Chicago hospital. The doctor comes out. My grandpa had his first heart attack, right, of many.
Oof.
He was a smoker, and the doctor comes out and tells my mom, Grandpa Ralph needs to stop smoking, right, if he wants to live. Meanwhile, the doctor is enjoying, I don't know if it's Camel or Marlboro or whatever, but
Yeah.
he's smoking in a hospital as he's given the advice to stop. And that enmeshment piece, like not only is it enmeshed into the system, but in a lot of people's lives as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think probably society in the future will look back at this version of society and just be like, well, right? The
Yeah.
hindsight's 2020. What were they thinking? Kind of stuff, because it's clearly it's clearly messing up young people and probably also messing up adults, right?
Exactly, like you said in the beginning that kids are weird. I was actually thinking adults are awful. We're terrible communicators now. We're rude to each other. We're looking at our devices all the time. Like, and again, like most of us have fully formed brains at this point and we're
Mm,
having issues. Like, there's no way we can. I mean, one of the things I always say is like, this isn't a children problem. This is an adult problem that is impacting children, right? And that to me is why this is the work of adults. It's very easy to put the burden on children and to say, oh, they need to learn how to use it responsibly. Again, replace the word phone with vape. But this is an adult problem. We have a lot of work to do. The way we use our devices around our kids, the way we normalize using technology in kindergarten or fifth grade or even 10th grade, that is telling children that this is okay. This is on us as adults to be different models for what we want or think it should be. And I think it's hard and scary for a lot of teachers to do that, especially if the pressure is coming from, administration or district leadership where again, teachers don't have a lot of say in what they're teaching. It's like, this is
sure.
the curriculum you will use. And, maybe you get to put your own spin in it, but increasingly less so, I think, than ever before in this effort to standardize everything, and PS, children aren't standardizable and really adults and teachers aren't either. So
Yeah.
I just think on behalf of teachers who feel afraid to speak out, I actually see
Mm,
what I'm doing as advocating for educators, even though I get a lot of pushback, interestingly, from teachers who feel defensive or shamed. And that's not at all my intention. I think this is I think the risk of teaching, the profession of teaching is deeply threatened by generative AI, by technology. We look at the increasing class sizes. My daughter has 40 students in her eighth grade English class, 40.
mm,
And the solution suggested to her teacher last year was just use AI to assess student writing. Well, students are using ChatGPT to write it in the first place. What's the point? Who's getting
mhm.
any benefit out of this? I don't want my child using it to write it, and I don't want her teacher using it to assess it, because learning isn't going to happen by what the AI assesses it to be, because again, that's problematic in and of itself, but because the teacher knows my child. And so the solution isn't reduce class sizes. It isn't go back to paper learning. It's
Mm,
use AI because you have 40 kids in your class. What else can you do?
mm,
And I don't
mhm.
accept that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. I do like social media for like comedy, right? And so I saw a post where basically a guy kicked off a conversation with AI and then just put two AIs talking to each other. It just gotten stupider and stupider, right? As they were talking. But that's the thing, is like it's not there's some cool stuff about it, but it's not a silver bullet, certainly is
Mhm.
something to think through.
Right.
And this is funny coming from me, because I've gone to districts and I'll teach and talk about AI. The funny thing about it, doing that, is I'll let them know I'm not an AI expert, right? I don't code, I don't vibe code either, right?
Mhm.
I do play around with AI and I try to think about like how to use it, but I give them mental models and mindset. I guess I try to just point out the direction of
Mhm.
how you might consider these things, and maybe we're not so different after all in terms of this intentional tech stuff.
No, but and
Yeah.
that's for adults that you're saying that? Or to
Oh yeah, yeah,
students?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. To adults, and usually I'm speaking to campus leaders, district leaders.
But that's the critical thinking piece of this. And to me,
Yeah,
that is what is most threatened by EdTech and generative AI. And I'm speaking primarily about LLMs and generative AI, like when I say AI. But, if we don't allow children the ability to develop critical thinking skills, they will not know how to use it in moments that do make sense, right? If we just
sure.
give them access to ChatGPT, kids aren't sitting there going, let me use this as a tool to help me think about some ideas. That's the part of school that children need, is the thinking
Right.
part. And so that to me is just, I really would like to see some school leadership resist that narrative.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one thing I don't like about it, well, there's many things, but my all my ideas can't be that good, right?
Yes.
And
Well,
boy, does
built
it,
to
you know, and I have to prompt it feedback, right? Critical feed, poke holes and that kind of thing. Otherwise, it's just like, Danny, you've done it again. Another hit, right?
right. Well, and think about the impact on human psychology for that too, especially for
Mm,
children, especially for children in like ego-oriented developmental stages, right? Where that,
yeah,
teenagers think they know everything. Do we want to give them an echo chamber where their ideas really
right.
are considered genius according to chat? Like that's not
Yeah,
healthy or safe. Like we need them to have a healthy dose of reality. Like, no, that idea is
mm,
terrible. Try again.
yeah, exactly. ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot Business Solutions Division, has been a trusted partner for schools for 30 years. At ODP Business Solutions, we're by your side to meet your evolving education needs. Let's talk about what keeps ruckus makers up at night. Creating engaging learning spaces while juggling budgets, safety protocols, and those endless supply lists. Here's the game changer. ODP Business Solutions helps you tackle it all. We're not just another vendor, we're your strategic partner in transformation. Want to turn a tired computer lab into a STEAM innovation center? We'll help design it. Need to keep 8 schools stocked and spotless? We've got sustainable solutions that scale. Looking to upgrade from whiteboards to interactive displays? We'll guide you through the entire process. And the best part, you can get it all from a single supplier. That helps you simplify ordering and streamline budgeting while staying compliant with easy access to cooperative contracts. However you want to advance, ODP Business Solutions has 30 years of experience helping districts like yours get ahead. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to learn more. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Summer sets the tone. When the professional learning is intentional and built for collaboration, it can strengthen culture before the year even begins. Frontline Education's 2026 K-12 Lens survey report found staffing pressure has eased overall, but gaps still remain. Districts reporting easier hiring are more likely to have professional growth that's structured and targeted to individual goals. So learning carries well beyond onboarding and supports ongoing improvement. Nearly half of districts that use software to manage and provide professional growth say hiring has gotten easier compared to 30% that don't use software. Download the full K-12 Lens report at frontlineeducation.com/leaders to see the data and the practices behind stronger culture and retention. You can get that report at frontlineeducation.com/leaders. Teachers love the support that IXL provides in the classroom, and ruckus makers love it all as well because IXL also gives school leaders meaningful insights on every level. Put your finger on the pulse of student performance with IXL and its dashboard to drill down to see progress and growth for individual students. You can even customize reports to hone in on the information that matters most to you. IXL helps ruckus makers make data-informed decisions that will benefit their students' growth goals. Get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. So I know you have a resource that we're going to point people toward, and it's the Unplug from EdTech Toolkit. Can you talk a little bit about like what's in there and why people would want to download it for free?
So it's a resource primarily for parents, but educators, admins should certainly take a look at it. That includes letter templates, just some basic information about what I see as the argument for changing the way things go in terms of ed tech. And right now, the 3 questions that I ask about ed tech products in schools are this: is it effective? Is it safe? And is it legal? And currently, the answer to all 3 is no. It's not safe. It's not effective. It's not legal in terms of like data privacy. And so for parents who want to resist any one of those points, this is an opportunity to say, hey, actually don't consent to these data privacy practices that are not protective. Or, hey, I don't consent to an online curriculum. We don't even allow YouTube at home, but you're telling me my child needs it at school. Like that crosses a line for us. So we're going to politely decline it. And so I have a lot of letter templates that really are intended to be informational, non-confrontational, but clear. And so the toolkit has thousands of downloads already. I will say that in my district of 45,000-ish, last year, I think I was the only parent I knew of who opted out. This year, there's 3 other parents. So that's not a huge number, but it's growing. And I see the opt-out as a means to an end. I don't want to make it that parents have an option, right? Like, I don't want that to be the result. I want this to be a dismantling to the point of forcing conversation, because it doesn't seem to be coming from leadership right now. I mean, that's my concern, is like, if leaders aren't thinking about this and doing something right now, how else do we sort of destabilize? I use the metaphor of the Jenga tower, the game when you pull the blocks out. We got to pull the blocks out. Like, this isn't good. And so wherever that is, one strategy for me is that unplugging EdTech is just having parents say, actually, no, I don't consent. I refuse this.
Well, before we get to the 3 questions I ask all my guests, was there anything related to this topic, Emily, that we didn't touch on that you would want to make sure we talk about?
Yeah, I think one thing I just want parents, educators, administrators to really hear is that EdTech is just big tech in a sweater vest. They are the same business models. They both rely on time on device and engagement. And at the end of the day, that business model is fundamentally at odds with child development, period. Social media, iPads, YouTube, Google Classroom, all of that is a business model that is not in alignment with kids. So that is, to me, the core of all of this. If we're going to reject social media platforms for our children, as we should, and if we're going to delay smartphone access to our kids both at home and in school, as we should, then we also need to say those things about EdTech products as well.
Right on. Well, if you could put one message, Emily, on all school marquees for a single day, what would your message be?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. The one that initially popped in my mind was do hard things. Take risks, do hard things.
Let's talk about your dream school. If you were building it and you had no constraints in terms of resources, your only limitation was your ability to imagine, what would be the 3 guiding principles building this dream school?
I love this too. And I had a teacher in the 5th grade who asked me this. I remember this assignment. We had to literally build our ideal school. And mine had a 2-story aquarium in it that you could go scuba diving in for marine biology classes.
Nice.
That's pie in the sky. Now, as an adult, what I would love to see is a return to computer labs that were intranet or Ethernet based as opposed to internet. That data and privacy stuff was contained within the systems, that anything that was used technologically with children was in alignment with child development and pedagogy and best practices. And really, it would be tech intentional, right? Like, later is better, less is more, relationships and teachers and skills before screens.
And we covered a lot of ground in today's conversation. Of everything we discussed, what's the one thing you want a ruckus maker to remember?
I've been using this metaphor a lot lately. So I get told, doesn't this feel like a David versus Goliath battle, right? The tech giant, so massive and wealthy and powerful. And I say, yeah, they are. But don't forget, David won.
Hey, ruckus makers, thanks again for pressing play. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. And before you go, if today's episode shifted something in you so that you want to do school different, or maybe you have a new idea about how to reimagine education on your campus, then check out My Principal Coach. It's your AI-powered leadership mentor. It's trained on 10 years of mastermind and private coaching experience that I've had. It's like having a world-class ruckus maker mentor in your pocket 24/7. You can start your free 7-day trial at myprincipalcoach.com.